everyone, I'm Krystal.
And I'm Eric.
And we have spent the last year traveling across the nation through 28 states, and we have become so obsessed with travel that we are looking to transition to doing it full time.
And if you love travel as much as us, you've probably looked into different options, including rooftop tenting or full-time van life. And lucky for you guys, we've done both. In this video, we're gonna go over the pros and cons of each. Let's get to it.
And the first benefit of having a rooftop tent is that it's actually a fairly low maintenance option. And what we mean by that is that the barrier to entry is pretty low. To get out into the wilderness, if that's your main goal, all you really need is a roof rack and the rooftop tent. Anything that you add on top of that in terms of amenities is just extra, so it's pretty easy to get into.
The second pro for the rooftop tent option is the drivability and flexibility of the rooftop tent. You could drive a wide variety of vehicles. We've seen them even be on top of Mini Coopers. You could drive it on a truck. It's on our crosstrek, so you can have any type of vehicle when it comes to the rooftop tent. And then you can also select from a wide range of rooftop tents themselves. They have the pop-up, they have the fold-out, they have many different sizes, so you can really mix and match and make whatever kind of setup that you want for your rooftop tent.
We even found one that fits Eric, so they're all out there.
So yeah, there's options for you. There's no doubt about it.
The third benefit of having a rooftop tent is that it is removable. And trust me, this is a benefit. You can pop the tent on when you plan on going out to use it, and you can take it off if there's going to be a couple months where you're not using it. Seeing as there's only two of us and we don't have a lot of storage space, we actually never were able to participate in that luxury, but we really wish we could have. On days that it snows and you have to get the snow off the tent, on days that you just want to drive on a highway on a regular speed, you still can't do it, and you can't run your car through a car wash. Or maybe you just shouldn't. I don't know, you can't. You shouldn't.
We didn't.
We did it just to be safe. But it is a really flexible option if you have a space to store it, that you can take it on and put it off, so you can just use it for the trips that you want to use it for.
Moving into the cons of the rooftop tent. Every time on your rooftop tent trips that you want to move your car, you're going to have to fully break down your campsite. On those rooftop tent trips, the benefit of the rooftop tent is that it's always on your car, and the main drawback is that it's always on your car. I can't tell you how many times when I just wanted to run out to the store or grab something. Oh no, we're gonna have to break down everything, load up the car, and get going. And it can be quite a hassle.
So the second drawback to having a tent is that you are, in fact, sleeping in a tent. Being in a rooftop tent really boxed us out of both really hot climates in the summer as well as just kind of mild climates in the winter. So the trip we took to Florida in January, hoping to use the rooftop tent, didn't really work out as planned.
Good morning. We did survive the night. Hooray!
Just not having access to those basic amenities and level of comfort is just going to be different than what you're offered in other sleeping situations.
So the last con that is worth mentioning when it comes to the rooftop tent is the wind noise while driving. This is something that weighed heavy on our minds when we were driving with our rooftop tent, so much so that we went and got an aftermarket solution, aftermarket rack with a wind guard to reduce the wind noise when driving our vehicle. And even so, in what we would consider to be an optimal situation, it still had significant noise over 65 miles an hour. So it's gonna really limit the speed with which you can actually take those rooftop tent trips. The first pro is having all of the comforts of home wherever you go. I can't explain how nice it is to, wherever you are, have your bathroom right then and there. You're on a hike, you need to go, it's right in the parking lot. Wherever you left the van, that's where you go. It is so convenient and comfortable to be on the road with your home base. It's indescribable almost.
The second pro that we love about vans is that you can take your van anywhere. So anywhere that you can go with a rooftop tent, you can bring your van. But you can't always rooftop tent in places where you could sleep in your van.
Welcome to Walmart, apparently.
And we found some really interesting uses for van life, things like tailgating, street parking, stealth camping in cities, and we love visiting cities. So those are definitely some benefits for van life.
It's not super stealthy if you look out on the street and you see a tent on top of a car.
No.
You might get a couple of weird looks.
I do not recommend trying that at home.
The last, and what might be the biggest pro of van life, is that it enables longer term travel than that of the rooftop tent. It is much closer, and in a lot of cases is a living situation. So that just allows for you to weather better conditions in terms of climate and take it farther for longer. And that is probably the biggest draw when we look at the van life versus the rooftop tent.
With that being said, van life does come with its fair share of drawbacks, and the first one is going to be the biggest: cost. This is definitely the first thing on everyone's mind when you start talking about van life, and it's hard for it not to be, with some van conversion companies out there quoting upwards of $300,000 for a conversion.
That's a real experience.
It's insane. We actually had that experience. So at a minimum, if you're purchasing a van, a new van, you're probably looking to spend $50,000. You could definitely buy a used van or a pre-converted van, but that would be a whole other video because it comes with its own variety of benefits and drawbacks.
One of the other potential drawbacks of van life is that there's just so much more to know, and it's so much more high maintenance than the rooftop tent experience. We do cover off on this about our first night and first week in the van, an introduction to all those kind of topics that you got to get your arms around, but you're gonna have to study. You're gonna have to understand electrical and water systems. So while the van is a much more sophisticated vehicle, there's a lot more that can go wrong.
Last but not least, one of the major drawbacks of driving a van is in fact that you're driving a van. Vans typically are going to be bigger than a standard size car. And while you can purchase a smaller size van, if you're going to be living in it, chances are you're going to be buying a car that is taller and longer than a normal standard size car. So there are limitations as to where you can go and where you can park. Even if you think about driving through a crowded city, parallel parking on a main street, those things do become more difficult. Where you may be straight up ruled out of participating in are things like parking decks, parking garages, and you do have to be cautious going over bridges and under overpasses, just if there's a lower height clearance there.
I was convinced I was going to take the top off the van every time I went under an overpass or on a bridge.
It takes getting used to.
It does.
Yeah.
It at least is going to be a learning curve. You're probably fine. It's probably not that tall, but it's scary for the first couple times for sure. So in summary, the barrier for entry is much higher for vans. There's an element of decision fatigue in both situations, but it's much higher in the van because there's a lot more risk there and there's a lot more things that you're gonna have to decide.
Having said that, having done both rooftop tent living and van life is just more rewarding for travelers like us. We think rooftop tents are great for people who are hardcore campers, who are used to being out in the elements or don't mind not having all of the luxuries. But for us, van life just comes with a sense of amenity and the ability for us to travel in small cities and small towns, which is something we just love to do.
So if you're interested in either rooftop tents or van life, we have you covered. Go to our page. We'll link to a couple of videos that we did both on our rooftop tent setup and our experience with van life, and definitely subscribe and follow because we will be moving full-time into the van coming up later in 2023. We'd be happy to see you there.
And let us know if you have any questions on rooftop tent or van life in the comments below. We are more than happy to share our experience because we know it's a lot.
All right, so see you later.
Happy adventuring.